In the wake of Alexander the Great's retreat, ancient India was a shattered landscape. It was a high-stakes, volatile environment of warring factions where a single tactical error meant annihilation. For the rising Mauryan Empire, expanding its borders was a matter of pure mathematical survival. If you stood still, you were swallowed by rival kings. Enter Chanakya, the political architect behind the Mauryan throne. He looked at this violent reality and formulated a brute military force is the most inefficient way to secure a state. Open combat drains the national treasury, slaughters the workforce, and puts the king at risk of a stray arrow. To Chanakya, a pitched battle was a catastrophic failure of imagination. True supremacy requires a different kind of calculus. The goal is to engineer circumstances that make violence entirely unnecessary. To achieve this, ancient Indian strategists developed the mandala theory. This was a geographical model, a circle of states, used to predict diplomatic friction and map out potential conflicts. The first rule of the mandala is absolute. Your immediate neighbor is your natural enemy. They share your border, meaning they inherently compete for your resources and land. But this dictates a second, highly exploitable rule. The kingdom situated directly behind your neighbor is your natural ally, because you are both squeezed against a common threat. This text explicitly details the mandala doctrine, identifying the would-be conqueror at the center, the enemy at the border, and the friend beyond. Working within this map, the state relies on the six-fold policy. As listed here, these are specific instruments of statecraft, including calculated neutrality, alliances, or a double policy of making peace with one state while simultaneously pressuring another. A master statesman calculates precisely which of these six levers to pull. By manipulating the geopolitical rings, you can encircle and weaken a target without mobilizing a single soldier. When diplomacy inevitably hits a wall, the ancient manuals transition from high-level policy to gritty execution, dividing conflict into three distinct categories. First is open war. This is the standard, bloody clash of armies in broad daylight, a blunt, costly tool that the state considers a desperate last resort. A step up in sophistication is deceptive war. This involves tactical trickery on the battlefield, like ambushing an exhausted army or bribing an enemy platoon to break ranks. But the pinnacle of statecraft is silent war. This is a conflict fought entirely in the shadows, designed to destroy a rival before any official declaration of hostility is ever made. Silent war shifts the battlefield away from heavily fortified borders and moves it directly into the most vulnerable target, the minds of the enemy's court. Executing a silent war required an intelligence apparatus of massive scale, deeply embedded within the institutional fabric of the Mauryan Empire. State manuals recommended highly specific, deep cover identities. Agents infiltrated rival territories, posing as merchants, ascetics, mendicant women, and students, weaving into every layer of foreign society. And a primary tactic was sowing dissension. Spies would plant forged letters or spread targeted rumors to convince an enemy king that his top generals and advisors were plotting against him. Operatives like the famous Jiva City adopted the guise of Jaina monks, using their trusted religious status to break a rival state's political will from the inside out. A perfectly executed silent war hollows out the target so completely that the foreign state either collapses under its own paranoia or surrenders without a single Mauryan soldier shedding blood. This strategic philosophy faced its ultimate test in 305 BC, when a massive external threat arrived at the treacherous northwest frontier. Seleucus Nicator, one of the formidable successors to Alexander the Great, marched his armies east with the intent to violently reclaim lost Indian provinces. Emperor Chandragupta Maurya was staring down a battle-hardened Greek military machine. Engaging in a protracted, open war across this terrain risked bankrupting his newly consolidated empire. The two superpowers collided in the Indus Valley, a critical geographic choke point, leading to intense military friction and a tense tactical standoff. This was the crucible for Chanakya's doctrines. The question was whether calculated statecraft could actually neutralize a Hellenistic superpower bent on conquest. The conflict ended, but not with a war of total annihilation. The friction was resolved diplomatically through the Treaty of 303 BC. Chandragupta made a tactical concession, giving Seleucus 500 war elephants. It was a massive asset, but one the Mauryans could spare, and exactly what the Greeks desperately needed for their own Western campaigns. In exchange, without fighting a major decisive battle, the Mauryan Empire absorbed vast, highly valuable territories encompassing modern Afghanistan and Balochistan. This document records the aftermath of the 305 BC bloodshed, noting the transfer of territory for elephants and the sealing of an epigamia, a matrimonial alliance that effectively pacified the Greek threat. By trading elephants for an empire and securing vulnerable borders through strategic alliances rather than bloodshed, the Mauryans proved their most critical law: the sharpest weapon is an intellect that renders the sword obsolete.